This is episode number 24, part 2 of Damona Hoffman and I Have a Podcast. Yo and hello, I am Vinnie Potestivo. This is I Have a Podcast, and in our last episode, I introduced you to Damona Hoffman, a podcaster, a dating coach, and an on-air personality. We discussed how she pivoted from one profession into another and how she's grown her audience over the years. And in dating, in podcasting, and in life in general, I think success comes from how you frame yourself in a unique way. It's not just what you want to talk about, but what your audience wants to hear, what they need, what their true needs are, and how you can meet them. And just like dating, get to know them, listen to them, and don't be afraid to commit.
I find that a lot of people are not thinking about the audience first. I'm always like, it's never about me. It's not like, well, I want to talk about this. And I come to this place 8 years later, having probably made the wrong choices in times in the past. But it's not about what show I want to make or what I want to talk about. It's about what does the audience need to know? And who do I want to be my audience? Who do I think would benefit from this information, these conversations, who would get this? And my audience has also evolved over the years, and I continue to listen to them. You know, this is why I have a dialogue. I really have an open dialogue. I have people submit questions for my show. And partially it's because I love doing advice. That's, the column I have in LA Times is an advice column. I love doing that. But I also love hearing, what are you thinking about? What are you struggling with? What do you need to know? Because that actually does help steer the content that I'm making.
You talk about knowing your audience, and there's two ways I'd like to approach this conversation. One is, when do you feel like you truly know when do you know your audience? Like, how do you know your audience? And then the second part is like, can you explain the benefits to why it's important to even project who you want your audience to be? Because like if you could pick an audience, like pick the audience you want. And there's part of picking your audience and there's part of your audience picking you. So can you walk me through a little bit about it? Because you've had several podcasts and they must be different experiences, right? Different conversations, different.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're completely different audiences, really. I can talk most about dates and mates because that is 100% my audience that I've built versus I Make a Living. I took over that podcast in season 2. So there was already an established audience for that show. Plus it's an established brand. It's a, accounting solution that a lot of entrepreneurs use. So that to me, I was like, I need to speak to the audience that's already there. Dates and Mates really evolved based on the responses I was getting to certain topics. And I've always believed in inclusivity and wanted to create a space that really spoke to a lot of different people's experiences in love. I will say at the beginning, there's all these marketing experts, right? And people who will tell you like, this is what you should do with your business. And I was like, I want to be really inclusive.
I'll say there's answers everywhere if you look for them, right? There's answers everywhere you look.
Right. And you also
so be careful where you look.
I feel like, comparison, what do they say? Like comparison is the enemy of, I'm not good with quotes like that, but if you are looking at what other people are doing, you're always going to be like, I'm not doing enough. So I was like, this person's making this much money coaching and this person's podcast is number 1. And like, what do I need to do? And I was instructed to really fine tune my audience, which is a smart thought process, but to really focus it in on like, look, you got to have women or men. And I've just always been someone who's really gender inclusive and inclusive of different orientations and different, just different lifestyles. And I was like, I don't know, like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to make people have to declare like I am a cisgender straight woman looking for a man. But that was kind of the direction, because that's all that was out there. That was the direction I was pushed into. And then I feel like I developed an audience that wasn't really mine necessarily. So as
Mm-hmm.
I have moved into topics that are a little bit more in alignment with the way that I look in the world, I have developed I have a lot of queer listeners. I have bisexual listeners. I have transgender listeners. I have people that choose not to define their orientation or their gender identity at all. And I love that. I love that this can be a safe place where everyone can get love. And now I work with the OkCupid brand, which I feel like has also been on that path for a long time. They were like the first to add different gender selections on their app. And I love that, like, now it feels like, this is my audience. Like, I still speak to straight cisgender women, but I like that it doesn't have to be defined by the way that other people told me it has to be defined. And that has opened up the possibility of a new audience of people that also feel the same way that I do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about landing on an audience that isn't necessarily your your audience, and I'm sort of put into a place where I'm like, I can imagine people feeling like needing to serve their audience and maybe being always off or feeling disconnected, and I can see how people feel like they might not be doing a great job at communicating a message if the audience isn't receiving it. And it's a great awareness to say maybe it's not you or your message, maybe it is the wrong audience, because the wrong audience in front of the right message will give you a bad result.
Yeah, like I remember I did an episode on politics and dating, because as Trump was running for office, we didn't know what was going to happen, but
Yeah.
it was a really charged time. I mean, still, we are more divided politically in relationships than ever before. That has now taken a bigger, like, if we look at the OkCupid data, people are more likely now to date outside of their geographic area than outside of their political area. And that there's never been a time in history where that was more true. It's surpassed gender, it's surpassed religion. It's the most important thing to most people on their list. And I was feeling that, and I felt like my audience needed to know that. And so I did a topic on politics and love. And I got a couple of very nasty responses, and you can read them on my reviews if you'd like. And people were like, "You shouldn't talk about politics. It has no place in dating. Like, I'm here to listen to dating." And it was like, but you can't extricate that. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. I have to talk about politics. And yes, it's not necessarily like, I have this conversation with my producer a lot, because I feel like my show is not a political show. It's not there. I'm not there to promote my political agenda or perspective. But again, it's about inclusivity. I would be doing my audience a disservice if I didn't at least raise the question and create the platform for the conversation to unfold. So that person probably unsubscribed, but you kind of have to know the difference between what is one person's offhanded comment and experience and serving the larger audience. And it's a dance to thread those different points of view.
I love that you said to discern, the volume of this one person's voice, because the people who complain do tend to be the loudest, way more so than happy applause. So it certainly
Exactly.
can feel, like the whole world is coming down on you just because, one person who had one, bad day and an interesting upbringing that led to an interesting perspective, I'm sure, um,
Yes.
to really change the energy out there completely.
And I'll admit that's been a challenging thing for me to embrace as my brand has gotten bigger and people see me more places. Like, it's amazing also with social media growing at the same time, how much agency people feel to attack not only what you're doing, but also like everything about yourself. Like, I did this episode. So I'm the love expert on the Drew Barrymore show, and I'm just there, Vinnie. I am just there to help people. I'm giving them my advice from 15 years of coaching people on dating, predominantly helping people through the use of dating apps. And like, I got this one person that was just hella mad, and they were like, your dating advice is trashy. Dating apps are trashy. Also, your hair sucks and you're probably not a very good mom. I was just like, why? Why do we have to go there?
You're probably left-handed. You probably don't even like the color yellow. You probably spell correspondent wrong.
It is so extra.
Ridiculous. By the way, everyone's an expert. Everyone's an expert, huh?
Right. But I'm extra. Like, I'm also like, I think we really need a cultural shift around this of just like, I mean, and I've observed this not even just with my own content, but like people are like, oh, I was trying to, bitch about Peloton instructors and everybody on the page like jumped on. I'm just like, why do you need to bitch about Peloton instructors? Can you just accept that they're doing their best? They're doing their best and trying to help you. And can that be it? But, it's just it's a touchy time.
I was gonna say they need to be taught creative feedback, creative criticism. That's a beautiful painting and I love those colors, and a different palette to do that in might be these over here, or that's a wonderful direction. And there's a wonderful, one of my favorite clients, Peter Thomas Roth, he says this to me, Vinnie, that's a great idea. Another way to do it is since we're throwing in expert opinion here, another way to go ahead and do it.
Coming from the background in traditional media where we did have to do that.
Yeah.
We learned that skill set, but a lot of people have that eye now or that ear and haven't gotten the rest of the education. And so I just like to it's kind of like the do no harm philosophy. And I really do listen to my listeners. Like, if you really have listened to my show and something I've said, like there was an episode where I misgendered somebody, and more than a couple of my listeners realized it and wrote to me. I'm not offended by that. I went back and I recorded the episode. I did an apology on Instagram, and I really aimed to fix my mistake. At the same time, if people just are like,
how cool that they knew they could reach out to you.
Right. Because I really am listening to my audience. And if they are like, I really need this is why I like creating the dialogue and having people submit their questions, because then I really know what they need to know. They're like, have you done an episode on interracial dating? Have you done an episode on this? And I can say, yes, I have. I mean, there's pretty much no topic in 8 years that I have not covered. So I'm like, yes, I've done that, but I forget because I've been doing it so long. Like, to me, 2 years ago, it feels like yesterday, but I'm like, oh yeah, that was 2 years ago. And I have to sometimes go back through my library and pull clips, or I'll say, you know what? I've realized I haven't talked about this in a while.
This has been Damona Hoffman and Vinnie Potestivo on I Have a Podcast. Tune into our next episode to hear more of Damona's strategy to building a successful podcast audience. Thanks for listening to I Have a Podcast. For more information about today's episode, visit us at ihaveapodcast.com. If you like what you've heard, follow us or subscribe to be notified of our next episode, and we appreciate any kind reviews.